It says it's streaming live again.
Okay.
We're up.
Did I don't have Jason on this. Is that, oh, he's the Gilbert Zoom
Yes.
is Jason. What is my, can you guys hear my kids being just horrible? Just horrible. Gail, did you say we are streaming or are we still on hold?
I don't know exactly what, every once in a while pops up in the upper left corner that says streaming, but now I don't see it. Jason, where are we at?
Gail, did you say we are streaming or are we still on hold?
I don't know exactly what, every once in a while pops up in the upper left corner that says streaming, but now I don't see it. Jason, where are we at?
Gail, did you say we are streaming or are we still on hold? Oh, goodness.
Great.
Upper left corner that says streaming, but now I don't see it. Jason, where are we at?
Gail, did you say we are streaming?
Okay, I believe we're okay now. I apologize.
No, not a problem at all. Thank you for letting us know. Gail, are we okay to restart? We paused there.
Yes, I'll reflect in the minutes that we're restarting at 3:25.
Okay.
I have-
And
Motion by Andrew, a second by Tyler, and that's
yes, to approve the agenda.
correct.
Okay, so the first item and the only item that we actually have today on our agenda is to consider and possibly approve the amended guidance or amended mitigation, I believe, based off of the governor's guidance. So I might turn this over. Is it to Ashley or Lindsay? Who would like to take it from here?
It doesn't matter. Maybe we'll do a little bit of a tag team. Ashley, you okay with that? Laura, you okay with that too? What I do want you to do, I believe in your Dropbox, there was a document that talked about the governor's press conference, and that's why we're kind of meeting today to talk a little bit about that. And one of the things that she mentioned is a new recommendation regarding quarantine due to exposure in school settings. So that's kind of what's been brought about. And I'm gonna just read a little bit more, then I'm gonna turn it over and let Laura and Ashley talk a little bit about what impact that has on us as far as with kids wearing the mask and how that will be different as far as the quarantining. But basically what it's saying is, if masks are worn consistently and correctly, exposure due to COVID positive does not require quarantine, but does require self-monitoring for symptoms. So before this time, if let's say Ashley or Laura, when they were going through some of this, if they had the situation where there was a COVID positive, then they went ahead and they did the close contacts, and they did if they were 6 feet or less, and measured that all out. And then those people that were the close contacts, they were put into a quarantine situation. Is that right, ladies? Okay, I got some head shakes, so I think that we're right. What is happening now, there's been some things, and I'm not gonna read the document to you. There's been some studies that they've done that if you have, let's say, students wearing the mask, both people are wearing the mask, that they've come out with a new regulation that basically says that they don't have to quarantine, but they do have to self-monitor. So I'm gonna shift it over to Laura just for a second, and then we'll, like I said, we can kind of tag team this. Laura, how would this affect when we're looking at this? If we have all the students that we have are wearing their mask properly, and I know that everyone's doing a very good job of working with that. How will this differ from what you used to have to do?
Well, it's going to start off the same, where I'm going to make sure that we have the positive case is confirmed, and then I would still do the contact tracing of who is sitting by that person, and still looking at the distance of the 6 feet and for 15 consecutive minutes. So I'm still going to look at all of that, and I'm still going to send the names of those students that would be considered in close contact to Story County. And they will still be contacting those students, parents, to say that they were considered a close contact of a positive case. But what comes into play here is if both parties are wearing a mask correctly, the positive case and the close contact, then they can just self-monitor. If it is in a household, like a sibling, it still falls under the old, it doesn't discount it with the mask, okay? So it's within the family, it stays the same. Healthcare workers and like elderly care facilities is the same. But here for the school setting, if one of the parties is not wearing a mask, then they both have to quarantine. Well, obviously the positive is going to be home sick and isolated. If one of the parties is wearing they started to, they did a sheet so you can see, like if no one is masked, then obviously you're going to quarantine the people the same, and they would do the 14-day quarantine. Starting day 0 is the day that you had the contact. And so if it doesn't matter if it's the positive person wearing the mask or the close contact that's wearing a mask, they both have to be wearing the mask. So that's kind of the change. And then that brings up, they reference the CDC on acceptable masks and acceptable wearing of masks. And that's where that document comes into play.
And the board members have that information. They have a little diagram. I don't know if you can see it from mine, but it looks like this, and it has 4 little pictures, and it talks about everyone masked, close contacts mask, some close contacts mask, and then no one mask. And that's kind of, Laura was reviewing a little bit about that. Ashley, before we go on to that, what they say about the things that they recommend for the mask, do you have anything that you would like to add? I know that you're the mitigation point person for this. Any comments that you think that would be good for people to know as we are looking at this?
Yeah, Laura did a great job of explaining the difference and what is going to be the same and what's going to be different in as far as scenarios. And that is one thing that Story County is relying on us to tell them who was wearing the masks and who wasn't. So that is in large part the change, because right now it was masks. Wearing a mask didn't negate the need to quarantine. You still had to prior to the governor's announcement on Tuesday. So now that is one additional piece that we have to determine as a school when we're giving that list to Story County of which kids were wearing a mask and which ones were not.
So really it comes down to, just a question for both of you maybe then, it comes down to the real difference is whether, if they're both wearing the mask, we don't have to quarantine. Is that correct?
It is, but there's a little tiny glitch to it. It's an acceptable mask, and which comes into play where right now they are not considering face shields alone as acceptable to mean that you wouldn't need to quarantine, as well as gaiters. So they're not saying you can't wear gaiters. They're not saying you can't have the shields or wear the shields. It just means that they would still fall under quarantining the 14 days. So,
I know everyone knows what we're talking about when we're talking about the shields, but the gaiters, you've probably seen a lot of people wear those. They're the ones that they wear around the neck and then they kind of pull them up to cover the nose and the mouth. They basically have said that they don't have enough, it's not known their effectiveness at this time, so that they will not allow those to be what would call a mask that would be, if something would happen, that you would still have to quarantine if they had just one of those that she mentioned on. Does that make sense to the board members?
Yeah, quick question for Laura and Ashley. The self-monitor instead of quarantine would that be considered what we're already doing? In other words, every morning temperature, make sure that or is there something more to self-monitor than what we're already doing?
It's twice a day, and then in Story County Public Health. So, up until this point, we and we're going to continue to do that, where we would contact those that were in close contact and make that call as we're partnering with Story County. And then Story County follows up and they give the official quarantining dates and things. And then they're also going to follow up. I spoke with Teresa Ferrari earlier this week, and for those instances for self-monitoring, they're still going to contact those people and let them know that they've officially been identified as a close contact, and give more information about monitoring symptoms twice daily and information as to what to do if their symptoms change.
Thank you.
And Ashley and Laura. So then this makes sense to me. Just a question that I have, or two that I have. You said we're responsible for indicating that they wore the mask. Is that, can you just tell me a little bit, like, how do you have to go about that? Is that actually watching video, or is that, just verification that we know that that's the rule, the teacher indicates it's being followed? Like, how far do you have to go with that? How much of that is our responsibility?
I think that's a good question, because how are, the teachers going to be policing the requirement? Right now we have it required to wear the mask, so people are wearing the masks. And so what we have is in place, I think, with teachers are bringing it forward that if the kids are reminded not wearing the mask, they go then to the principal, and that takes care of that. It brings up we, as a district, can we police like what, wearing the gaiters? We're not going to know who was wearing a gaiter last week when I'm trying to contact that. So it brings up that question of, is that going to be an allowed type of mask? So it is manageable to find out if they're wearing a mask or not.
Okay, but just knowing that that's a requirement, and we understand that everything I've heard is people are, following that requirement. That's enough. You're not having to go back and like retrace or verify any of that. It's enough.
Sorry to interrupt. Like lunchtime, they're going to have their masks off. So if we've deemed that they're a close contact during greater than 15 minutes eating a lunch, they would still have the full 14-day quarantine because they had no mask on. So there's going to be some times or some situations where it's still going to be quarantined. And I think the goal of the whole governor was to keep more people in school and less quarantine time out of school, right? Keep us.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. I'm really glad you mentioned that too, because I think about lunch, because I think that is something I probably wouldn't have thought of otherwise. And obviously this is just during school, right? I mean, people still have to keep in, if they're if they have a positive test, then of course all of their outside of school interactions would be monitored as well. Simply not our responsibility, but something that the county would do, and they would then make the distinction there. Okay, that helps. If I understand it, I just want this scenario, because this has been going around in my head since the second I heard the governor say this. To your point, we do allow gaiters. I'm just going to use gaiters for this example. Like this is face shield or gaiters, same thing in this case. If I make a choice that I want to wear that, and the students around me maybe wear a mask, I heard you say that if I then am the positive case, or if I'm nearby a positive case, quarantine comes into play. Now it's like, in a sense, it's almost like now how other people act can impact. We always knew we were helping each other with the masks. We always knew that, but it feels like we're even more so kind of tied to this piece. And that, in my head, I'm just kind of wondering our guidance if that aligns with this well, or if it's, do we have an idea? Or I would think face shields are likely at elementary school and intermediate. Do you have like a big difference? Are there a lot of people that choose not to wear masks, that choose those other routes, Stacy and Amy? Or?
We do have very few, but a couple kiddos in each classroom that are using sometimes the shield in lieu of a face mask. There are times that the masks are absolutely required. So those, so everybody's wearing them at some point. There's nobody that's exclusively a face shield. But yeah, I think that's part of our thought process and some conversations Ashley and I have had about, you know, I understand there's, you know, we went the face shield idea trying to decide if that was more palatable to young children, but we found that the masks seem to do pretty well. And I would say wearing a mask is probably more palatable than 14 days of quarantine for most of our parents at this point in time. So I think that I would, yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Is that the same for you?
Yeah,
Amy?
at the intermediate, the novelty of the shields has wore off. We have very few that choose to wear that during times when they are allowed to choose to do that at their seats. We do have a handful that still do, but the majority of our kids really are wearing masks all day. You know, I think we'd have the flexibility as long as, you know, it's not for 15 minutes. The times where I think the kids choose to are after recess, when they're hot. Now, with the temperature cooling down, it might change things a little bit too. But it won't be a huge adjustment to what our kids are already doing.
Got it. And then
Yeah,
how about
is
gators?
there a
Oh, sorry.
recommendation or what? I mean, are we gonna vote on something, or what's the?
There is. I have a question here, Tyler, just a quick one, and then we'll get on with it. But like, I just want to ask because I have some people who are wondering the same. Gators, are those a big deal at the other schools, or is gators and face shields not? Interchangeable, same thing. Are people mostly wearing masks? I think there's going to be potentially a recommendation that why don't we just change our mitigation to just say masks instead of allowing these face shields and gators. That's what I'm getting to, Tyler. I know right now that I think that that's something to consider just to make this.
Well, if that's the recommendation, I guess exactly where you're going, and get feedback from the principals. Is that going to be a problem or not? And if
Yep,
not,
that's what I'm trying to do. Exactly what I'm trying to do. So,
yeah.
And I'm hearing from Stacy and Amy that it's not that big of a deal, that there's a lot of people who are already wearing masks, and that the benefit of this with maybe a slightly lower risk of quarantine outweighs, is what you're hearing. Have you heard from parents? Any parents called in as a result of this?
Some of my parents on quarantine, definitely. And we were able to, with the change, bring a couple kiddos back. The kiddos that we were not able to were the kids at lunch that were sitting in proximity. So
Got it.
The only question I have would be, I think there's no problem, you know, if the board votes to go ahead and go from expected to required at the intermediate level. The question would be, do we get rid of all masks, or in a controlled setting, can we allow this 5-minute break, our kids sit in the same seats, you know, so there wouldn't be the extra time with shields, or do we just get rid of shields, is the question that I have and my teachers have. And
Mike, you had something as well. Was that?
I just was going to say, in my building, Deb, to answer your question, I do have kids who wear some gaiters, but I have extra masks from what we passed out. And so what I said at our administrative meeting is that I would just, you know, we'd send information out to parents, and if I needed to give out some of those cloth masks I have that are extra, I have 40 or 50 extra. I could distribute those to kids and make sure they had masks. So I would be all for masks. I think it's a lot saves on that quarantine and having kids in and out and have some masks I could distribute. So.
Okay.
So Deb, the recommendation we would be looking at would be that I think that it was recommended at the elementary and the intermediate, we would go ahead with mask the recommendation would be for required at those two buildings, and that that it would have to be basically an approved mask and following the recommendation of the CDC. And we, the gator, I can't go back 3 days and say, were they wearing a gator? Were they wearing a mask? If we just say no gators, and just like Mike said, I talked to Vic too. I think that they're getting ready to, for kids that don't that are wearing the gators, that don't have the mask, they have enough of the extra ones to give them.
I'm sorry, Amy, I heard you say something about would this allow some flexibility during like short periods of, you said 5 minutes or so, where people come out of underneath the 15 minutes, I guess is what you're saying. And is that part of the recommendation?
I don't think we need to vote on whether or not we need to give kids a 5-minute break. I mean, in my mind, we got to keep it up to the teachers there and the principals to kind of let them make a decision in their classroom. I mean, I don't want to get down to 5-minute break, 7-minute break, 2-minute break. I mean, I don't, to me today is, I think what we need to just discuss is, should we recommend masks all schools all the time? And again, then we define mask as not including a gaiter. Obviously the face shields is no longer going to work with just a face shield. And from what I'm reading here, the gaiter is not going to work either. And again, just back to the 5 minutes, we just got to leave it to the teachers and the principals to be smart.
I'm not trying to dictate the 5 minutes, Andrew. I think it's just important that our parents read this and understand and know. They're going to have questions, right? Wait, let's just clear it up. So I'm not trying to make that a part of policy, but just, I think Stacy or Amy asked a question. And I think it deserved to be answered. So, okay. Any other discussion, John or Tyler, anybody else have questions about the recommendation?
Yeah, I'm probably just leaning towards, for the high school and middle school, go with masks that qualify, and for the intermediate and elementary, that it's up to the parents. If they want shields, they can wear shields, and if they want masks, they can wear masks, and they take the consequences of the quarantine that go with that decision. But I realize I'm only one opinion, but that's the way I'm leaning. So I want to just throw that out for people to, shoot holes in, so that I don't surprise you if I vote nay against doing it the same for all schools. So if people want to, throw that out there, that's kind of the way I'm leaning. So I just want to throw that out for discussion.
I saw somebody had their hand up. Carrie.
I just wanted to, after hearing what John said, I think it's important to know that if I would be a student to choose to not wear a mask, and I would come down positive, then anybody around me would have to quarantine. I think we just have to know that, because the only way we can't quarantine is if both people are wearing masks.
Understood. And
Okay.
I think that's a legit concern, Carrie. So, I mean, I get it.
No, I get you. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I just say I do support that if we need to, we can do things differently by building. In this case, I think it'd be problematic to keep track of who was or wasn't. And so I'm for the recommendation, but John, I do agree that in situations, if in the future, we can certainly look at it differently building by building. But I think to keep it simple, I'm going to vote for masks.
Hey, Deb, can I ask one thing? I just want to make sure we got our administrative team, a lot of them here. Others that couldn't make it, they did, weigh in on this. We talked about this, was it yesterday, day before, on an administrative meeting? Is there anything when we talked about this as far as where we were going to go that I left out of that recommendation that you think that needs to be in there? I'm just kind of phrasing that to the administrative team. I hope that we got everything there. I want it to be very clear, as Deb had indicated, to the parents, so that they know where we're coming from. And Anything else that we talked about there, or anything that I've forgotten? Okay, thanks.
Ashley, I think you had one comment, then maybe we'll wrap it up.
I did, one other thing I just wanted to point out is, when we're doing the contact tracing, by the time child has symptoms tested and then we get results, we're making these phone calls 4 to 5 days behind when the child was exposed. And so making those phone calls, and then if we had to ask them, did you send your child to school, or ask a teacher? Like, I just can't imagine asking the teacher, did so-and-so wear a gaiter, or did we wouldn't be able to tell them their name. Well, we wouldn't. So we'd have to say, was there any child in your room wearing a face shield for 15 minutes or more? Or was there any child in this room wearing a gaiter? And I just think that it already, making those phone calls and going, in a lot of instances, 5 days back, in that contact tracing process. I mean, Laura and I are pretty good. We've got our system down, but adding that piece in there and asking the parents, especially I know even for my own children, they have gaiters and they have masks. So which one did they pick, that day? Some days I couldn't tell you if I had to think back 5 days. So that's one thing to consider too.
Yeah, that's fair. Would this go into effect Monday, or when are you thinking that would go into effect?
That's what we were thinking. It would go into effect on Monday.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to make a motion, if that's okay, to go ahead and mandate masks for all buildings. And masks do not include gaiters and face shields. So it's going to be the approved masks per the CDC going forward, so we can then abide by the new non-quarantine guidelines set up by the state.
Awesome.
Second.
Is there a second? Okay. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, so we had Tyler, Andrew, and Deb for aye, and John for no. Okay. And I think, like Tyler said, we'll continue to keep our eye on it, right? We're going through this, and as we learn more, we'll make adjustments, but sounds like a good idea. This was the only item on the agenda.
Real quick too, the communication piece on this, especially I think with the Gators, because there may be some, do we feel confident we'll get that out in a quick manner? Because it's going to be tough to turn around by Monday since it's Friday afternoon.
We have a draft all ready to go. We didn't want to send anything out or do anything until we had your blessing and approval. I think that Carrie, I think that we were planning on sending that out before the end of the day, correct?
Good.
Yes.
And if we
correct,
need,
sorry.
do any schools need additional, I'm asking this quickly, do any schools need additional masks like that they have? I know some women at our church are creating some more and have more to drop off. If we can maybe reach out and let them know. So in case someone does wear the wrong thing, we have some backup for them.
I think we all have some additional in our building right now, just with the initial order that PTO helped to fund. And then also some various, I think probably Gilbert Lutheran had provided quite a few. We did, the state also had a opportunity that we could get cloth masks as well. So I know Lynn Reed has completed the survey to get free cloth masks that will be suitable. And then we've had a lot of feedback that parents really like the masks that we got for the kids. They just fit well, and they're, there are 2-ply, so they fit, but they seem to be more breathable. So Lynn Reed and I have also worked with setting up a store. So through Graphic Edge, who was our vendor the first time, so that parents would have an opportunity to buy more if they so chose.
Awesome. Great. Okay. Entertain any other? Nope.
I just want to thank everybody again. I just think our district is doing a great job. I've got a brother-in-law that's public health out in Colorado, and I saw him last week, and when he saw our dashboard, he was amazed that we're that transparent. He said, I can't even get that data from our schools in our county. And I show this to a lot of my colleagues that are around the state. So they're just pretty impressed with what we've done. And I just thank everybody for continuing to allow us to have kids in school. So great job.
It's a lot of hard work.
Comments. Yep. Thank you.
Huge credit to our staff in all buildings. They have been amazing. from teachers to associates, our custodians, our cooks. It has truly been a team effort.
That's amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Yep, great job. Move to adjourn.
Thanks, everybody.
John, so there's a motion to adjourn,
I'll second.
second by Andrew. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, meeting is adjourned.
Great job, everyone.
Head out.
Howdy.
Sorry.
See ya.
Dan.
Thanks, guys.